Get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on WNJC.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli, Russ Gallo here. Russ, how you doing, man?
What's going down, bro?
Listen, I still got my voice after CPAC. Things are looking up right now.
It's a shocker.
It's a big shocker. You know what that means? It means I didn't drink enough. But we both know that's contrary to actual fact.
Oh, I heard there's a video.
There is a video. We're not going to mention it any further, though.
We should play it.
Let me tell you something. I was hurting after our unsustainable bar tab party at CPAC 2016, man. And when I say hurting, I mean like moaning and groaning, unconsciously hurting.
And it was a blast as usual. If you don't follow us on Twitter, you absolutely should. And if you're at CPAC, this party goes on every year. It's free.
It's a little late to tell them this now, Russ.
But start following us on Twitter and follow the tweets of CPAC. And we always unleash the time and location of the party during CPAC. And it's a blast.
It's the best underground party ever. Russ and I developed this idea about 3 years ago with Congressman Steve Stockman, now former congressman, where we just put it out there on the sly, man, on the DL. You gotta know somebody to get in there. It's a great time.
And to be honest, like how every other party says, to start at 7 p.m. and it ends at question mark. Ours literally ends when security comes, because that's what's happened every year so far.
And we never know when they're gonna come. And listen, credit where credit's due. Brad Marston, John LaRosa from 4-Tier Strategies, fantastic as always for letting us white label their party hashtag Unsustainable Bar Tab. It's their creation, their baby, and they've trusted it with us for 3 years. I don't know what they're thinking, but you know what? And also thanks to Tea Party Forward and Niger Innes for sponsoring the party this year as well. We're growing like crazy, and we're going to give you some of the interviews from CPAC later on in our CPAC recap. But just a couple of things. Because Russ, you got there a little late. CPAC's getting younger and younger every year, and we're getting older, man.
Younger and younger, but it's a blast, man. You have people of all ages, and from the whole spectrum of the right of center part of this, all parts of the spectrum there, and it's literally a blast. I mean, if you're a Republican, if you're right of center, even if you're just a moderate kind of person, or if you're an extremely conservative person, you will find people to have interesting conversations with at CPAC. From behind enemy lines in the People's Republic of New York City, you can't say that here. You go to a bar and start talking about politics, you better have like a bat with you, because it just gets out of control over here.
Absolutely. And I just noticed in our chat room, of course, Brad Marston's in there, but we got to give a shout out to our good friend. We don't see him that much because he's in the Navy. Brian Antico in the chat room with us. Gotta give him a shout out. Just point to him by name, man. He is, I don't know if I'm allowed to say where he is, but he just said it himself. He's in Gitmo. People, you want to talk about behind enemy lines?
Still open for business, I see.
Brian Antico is in Guantanamo Bay listening to the show right now. God bless you, brother. We hope you're safe. We hope you're doing good. We will talk to you real soon. Get home safe, man. The beer's on us when you get home. But just very quickly on CPAC, because we got so much to talk about tonight. We're going to have interviews with Ambassador John Bolton, with Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, with Scotty Hughes talking some Trump and some other stuff.
I love Scotty.
Oh, I love Scotty too, but she's a little mad at me, Russ. She's mad. I forgot the cannolis. We'll get to that later. But just so much happening. First, CPAC and primary news thrown together. Donald Trump snubbed CPAC, did not show up, said he was going to. They gave him the first opening speaker spot of Saturday, didn't show up. I need to get the Gallo take on that.
At the end of the day, it was a smart move. Listen, he's got primaries. I mean, the proof is in the pudding tonight. He went where the voters were. There were primaries being held that day that he was supposed to speak. Yeah, you could say the conservative base of the party's at CPAC. Look, there's only a few thousand people there from all over the country at CPAC. It was a setup to begin with, if you think about it. You were there earlier than I was. What were the Marco supporters getting ready to do?
Marco supporters and the Cruz supporters were talking about a walkout and talking about booing him down. But beyond that, and Scotty Hughes will get into this in the interview we had, you're talking to the converted at CPAC. Those are people who definitely voted. They decided who they're voting for, and that's that. They're probably not changing any minds. I think, and Scotty will go into this. I almost called it Skahati, which is what you call her in private, but whatever. That Donald Trump looked more interested in turning voters, broadening the base, doing what he does, than he was to go into CPAC talking to a bunch of people who've already made up their minds.
Look, at the end of the day, it was a strategic decision, and I think it was the right one. I mean, look, he's whooping butt tonight. So they were recording this. It's Tuesday night, and there's primaries in Mississippi and Michigan. Both were called so far for Donald Trump.
With more to come, most likely.
Yeah.
And we're going to see what else is to come here tonight.
I heard Marco Rubio's getting ready to give his fourth-place victory speech. Is that going to happen again?
Well, isn't that what always happens? Marco Rubio's going to spin it around and be like, he is the best candidate out there.
Because I know Fox News is doing its usual. Megyn Kelly, that.
Well, we're looking right now when Trump's over close to 250,000. Casey's at 170,000.
But they're doing their usual spin of the real battle here is for second place.
The real battle
How
for fourth.
about the real battle is
for
Donald
first.
Trump is whooping that ass
How about
all
the real
across the
battle's
country?
first?
All right, look, I've said it a million times. I really wish Ted Cruz would be the president of the United States. I think the guy is brilliant. He's a true conservative.
I got to tell you, Russ, at CPAC, during one of our shows, live shows that we did for WNJC 1360, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station, I came out for Cruz finally.
Well, there you go.
So, I mean it's out there.
You always come out for a loser just in time, so that's good.
Thank you.
But at the end of the day, the real story is Donald Trump. The guy... let's talk briefly about Donald Trump, since we have a moment before we get to these interviews.
We have a moment, yes.
So Donald Trump, how is it possible that he's beating Ted Cruz and winning in a primary season where typically your most conservative voters are voting? Why is he winning?
It's the hair.
Well, it's clearly not the hair. It might have something to do with the hair. It's that, and he mentioned this in his speech tonight finally, and I'm glad he is acknowledging it, and the guy's brilliant. He knows what he's doing. It's political correctness. How many men in this country think things all the time, and women too for that matter, but are afraid to say it? Things about sexual harassment. If you have a job and you have to sit through some sexual harassment briefing, and if you're a man, you're just sitting there like, wow, this is just like basically saying all men are animals and disgusting. Or an equal opportunity briefing at your workplace, where if you're a white male, you're just sitting there thinking, wow, all white men are pretty bad. They're racist, sexist, homophobic, bigots, and it's a mess. Well, Donald Trump doesn't play by those rules. He says the things inside of his head that all of us are thinking and says them. Is there a person listening to me right now that doesn't think a terrorist captured on the battlefield doesn't deserve to be waterboarded to get intelligence out of him if we have it on good authority that he knows something that we need to get access to?
I mean, we may be 1 degree of separation from somebody who's doing that right now as we speak, listening to the show. Just kidding, Brian.
But there's not... Most Americans don't see anything wrong with that. So Donald Trump goes up there and says, yes, I will give the order to waterboard, and worse. And guess what, folks? Deep down, most Americans think that waterboarding ain't that bad and that we should do worse, too. So Donald Trump is tapping into something there.
I think Donald Trump is tapping into a lot of things. That's part of it. The political correctness is definitely become a wedge issue. It's the Russ Gallo theory of politics. You create a wedge, people are going to break on one side or the other side of the wedge, and most of the time they're going to break your way if it's a good wedge for the conservative movement. But beyond that, by doing that, Donald Trump is bringing in more voters. Turnout is increased across the board.
Every primary so far has huge turnout in the Republican side, and abnormally small turnout for the Democratic side. So Donald Trump is doing what the Republican Party for decades now has been claiming that they wanted to do. They wanted to create a big tent party where they create new Republicans from new segments of the population. Well, guess what Donald Trump is doing? He's getting people to vote. You'll have a lot of people say, well, he's doing real well in states where independents are allowed to vote. But when we get to the places where it's winner take all and only Republicans
Isn't that what you want?
Yeah, well, listen, at the end of the day, should independents be choosing our candidates? No. But it's a good indication of where this man will go in a general election. If independents are voting in our primaries for Donald Trump in overwhelming numbers, guess where they're going to go?
In the general. Absolutely right. I tend to agree with you on that. And I think most independents lean conservative anyway, but I think you're going to get even more now if you have someone with a populist message. Now, that's not to say that Ted Cruz can't tap into something in the later states and turn this around. I don't know what the delegate count's going to be coming out of Michigan and Mississippi and Hawaii and all these other places. But I will say this, it's may not be close state-wise, but we're only talking about a less than 100-vote gap between Cruz and Trump before tonight.
Delegate vote.
Yeah. I mean, that's what counts at the end of the day.
The problem is this, though. At the end of the day, most people, when they were trying to figure out where we would be at this point in the game, would have said that Donald Trump had no business winning any southern states, especially the Deep South, evangelicals, type people. But at the end of the day, Trump is whooping that ass with evangelicals, too. Even tonight, on the exit polls, Trump won the evangelical vote in Mississippi. So listen, again, I love Ted Cruz. I think he's the more conservative of the two. But Trump is on to something here.
Trump is on to something because he recognizes that voters are not one-issue voters anymore. The so-called evangelical vote is not just about evangelicalism. It's about fiscal conservatism as well. It's about jobs. It's about the economy. It's about change in Washington. It's not just God and God. And Donald Trump treats people like they are people, not like they are people that fit into a box. You know what I mean?
On every issue, and you got to know how a guy like Donald Trump thinks. He's a successful guy from New York, a businessman. You don't negotiate, and I've said this for years on this show. You don't negotiate by starting from the middle. You start on an extreme, and then the other politicians and the pundits will say, well, he's flip-flopping on a lot of issues. No. You start at an extreme. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico is going to pay for it. So, at the end of the day, let's say Mexico doesn't pay for it. Who gives a rat's ass? The wall got built. You start at an extreme position and work your way back. And that's what Donald Trump is doing on every issue that conservatives care about.
Isn't that what Ronald Reagan did when he said that we're going to build a space station in space that's going to shoot down missiles?
Star Wars.
Didn't
even have the technology for it back then.
Didn't John F. Kennedy say that when he said we're going to go to the moon?
You start
broad ideas,
and you let them pull you back. And when they pull you back, they think they won something. When in reality, and Trump said this in a few times in interviews. When you're doing negotiations, you put out a bunch of demands. A bunch of them are throwaways that you don't care if they go for or not, but you have something to give them to make them think they got something out of you. But at the end of the day, you got what you wanted. Every issue he speaks about, that's the tactic he's using.
Time to go to the chat room for some comments here. By the way, folks, when we do the show live, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on Spreaker, and then before we send it out to all of our affiliates, we got a chat room going, and it is hopping tonight, pal. A couple of comments from the chat room. Brad Marston wants to know, when was the last time you took a Trump air flight to go see a New Jersey Generals game? Kind of implying that not everything Donald Trump touches is winning. And Dano agrees, saying that the Dems have a huge voter turnout problem and that the Republicans have them on the ropes. If the rhino idiots want to tap out and give it to them, then, that's another story. But let's take Brad's comment
I'm glad
first.
Brad mentioned that, because that's another common Trump-bashing technique. The guy was successful at lots of businesses, not so successful at other business ventures. That's pretty much everyone who's successful has failed. Do I need to go with Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech? The guy is successful overall. He's worth billions. The few businesses that failed, that the businesses themselves had to file for bankruptcy, not Donald Trump personally, he used the laws of this country that people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and John Kasich all created and got put on the books to his advantage, and there's nothing wrong with that. And Donald Trump admits this.
Trump Air, Trump Steaks, Trump University. There's going to be...
Okay, Trump building, Trump
how about
real estate.
Trump Tower? How about Trump Taj Mahal? How about the fact that there happens to be an Atlantic City that exists right now because of a whole city.
Listen, Gene, I could go down a list of things in my life that I've tried to do and
I'm not a Trump guy. Let's be clear, everybody.
Me too, but you know what? The more you bash a guy like Trump, the more you push a guy like me into his corner.
Donald Trump is such a brilliant businessman. He owns the trademark to the phrase Central Park. Not even New York City. The People's Republic of New York City owns that